Lawmaker has filed a bill that would allow producers to sell as many ungraded eggs to consumers as they want. Grading involves looking at an egg's quality and appearance. Tonight, KLTV7's Michael Richardson explains how this proposed law could impact the price of eggs.
Texas law should not have a restriction on a small producer to be able to serve the local citizens and local businesses.
If Representative Daniel Alders' law goes into effect, there would be no restrictions on the number of ungraded eggs smaller producers could sell directly to consumers. That's according to the draft of the committee substitute for House Bill 2953, which would place one limit. Egg producers could sell no more than 300 dozen ungraded eggs per week to Texas restaurants.
We're living in a time where there's a strong movement for the farm-to-table process, and a lot of restaurants are getting behind that.
Asked how the law could impact egg prices, Alders says,
maybe it'll make a dent in our local economy. We've seen egg prices dropping over the course of the last couple of months, so hopefully that just continues.
In a statement, economist Dr. Ray Perriman says in part, allowing a more open market will help both to keep prices more affordable and to provide farmers with greater opportunities. Although the current shortage will likely dissipate as the avian flu is brought more under control, the bill offers long-term benefits to consumers, restaurants, and farmers. Michael Richardson, KLTV7 News.
And the draft committee substitute for House Bill 2953 would not apply to wholesale or retail sales.